recent heat waves have made one thing clear: the world is hotting up. As temperatures rise, researchers are warning the global economy faces major losses if humanity fails to act on climate change. If we don't slow global warming in line with the Paris Agreement, global GDP will contract by 18% by the middle of the century, according to Zurich-based reinsurer Swiss Re. It's warned that economies in Asia will be hit hardest. In fact, China is at risk of losing nearly 24% of its GDP in a severe scenario. Europe could lose almost 11%. The world's biggest economy, though, the US, stands to lose close to 10%. So, to discuss the risks facing global economies and whether or not governments are awake to these risks, I'm joined in the studio by Ajit Naranjan from DW Environment. Thanks a lot for being with us. So when we talk about economies being affected by climate change, what are we actually talking about? What sort of impacts does it have?
So what scientists have shown is that by having already burnt loads of fossil fuels and heated the planet, we've hurt the economies of the entire world. No country is immune from this. And that ranges from everything from on a day like today where it's really hot, where you're sweating behind your desk and unable to concentrate properly. It reduces productivity through hot temperatures, but at least all sorts of more severe effects. For instance, things like crop losses, which mean that countries are unable to feed their people even. And I mean, as we've just seen, that obviously has huge knock-on effects across the world. But also to kind of some of these more extreme wet events. So things like storms and hurricanes that are becoming more intense and stronger, where they wipe out coastal communities, destroy tourism industries. And it goes all the way up to the most kind of unpredictable events, which obviously in a study like this you can't really factor in very well, but things like pandemics, which are also becoming more likely because of climate change. And we know that a pandemic, the lockdowns that we experienced with COVID, obviously had a huge effect on the economy.
So do you think governments are awake to these risks and are doing enough to mitigate them?
The short answer is they're not doing what they should be doing if they were to treat this purely rationally from an economic perspective. I mean, I think that's very clear. A country like the US, even if we forget about climate change for a second and just think about the number of people dying from air pollution from fossil fuels, it would make financial sense, economic sense, to switch to clean energy purely on those grounds alone. Then when you factor in the heat waves, when you factor in the wildfires, you think about all the people across the rest of the world suffering as a result of this pollution, it's completely not a rational choice that's being made on economic grounds here.
OK, Ajit Naranjan from DW Environment, thanks for staying across that, and you'll be keeping across it because it's not a problem that's going away, is it? Now, July has seen record temperatures reached in parts of Europe as a heat wave swept across the continent. Though some have enjoyed the sunshine, it's brought added misery to many European farmers. In Italy, a prolonged drought means rice harvests are down as traditionally fertile lands dry up.
Rice farmer Giorgio Gelatori is measuring the local water. He fears that salt water has seeped into his field as a result of the extreme drought. High salinity shows up in the foam. We have to keep an eye on that. In the worst-case scenario, we would have to shut the supply down here immediately. To do that, Giorgio would have to flood his rice field in the Po Delta, one of Europe's most fertile areas. But there's been little rainfall in northern Italy since November. Water levels in the Po River are low. This worries everyone because with supplies running out, our rice shortage is becoming a problem for the entire rice production chain. The Po River water level has never been as low. When the river's water pressure falls, seawater flows upstream and salinities rise. Previous remedies are no longer effective. Take saltwater barriers, for instance. Seawater has repeatedly surged over them, landing in the river. Another solution, artificial lakes to trap river or rainwater after rainfall. But there are still far too few of these. Currently, 90% of Italy's rainwater is not captured. Meanwhile, the water situation is getting worse. The region of Veneto has asked neighboring South Tyrol to release more fresh water from its power plants in the mountains. But where is the water supposed to come from? In the Olten Valley, the Zogla Reserve power plant is at a standstill. The lake is only 4% full. There is nearly no rain here at all, and there is exceptionally little snow on the peaks. The glaciers have long since melted, and so there is also no melt water. If we were to continuously deliver the amount that Veneto would need, or had requested, all the reservoirs in South Tyrol would be completely empty within 20 days. In northern Italy, people are already talking about a water war, and the summer has only just begun.